Are you familiar with FBI Special Agents Kyle Seraphin?
I'm familiar with the name.
Is that yes?
I'm familiar with the name. Familiar with the name. Familiar with the name.
Let's bring in Kyle Seraphin. He's the FBI whistleblower who helped expose government censorship of our First Amendment rights.
Now, we only have this memo because a recently suspended FBI agent called Kyle Seraphin brought it to the public, and we're grateful that he did. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
He's the host of something that strangely is called the Kyle Seraphin Show.
Kyle Seraphin, I can't thank you enough for speaking out. I knew you guys were out there, and I knew it was just a matter of time, but you got a lot of guts putting your face and your name to this. You're doing a service on behalf of the American people, and from the bottom of my cracked and broken heart sometimes, thank you very much.
Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Today is Tuesday. It is August the 27th. We're rolling live right now on rumble.com, on X, on Twitter, whatever they're calling it. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. And we appreciate you joining us in the chat. If you guys are in there, give us a thumbs up in the video. Make sure you like this and share it. Subscribe and so on and so forth and all those things. And I really want to thank a couple people. Number one, I want to thank Eric Jason, who's our chat moderator over on Rumble. Does a great job and is always looking into it. So, Eric, thanks for being a good guy. Even doing moderation stuff over on our locals channel, which you guys can join. If you guys did see some things dropping on Twitter yesterday, the folks from locals have seen it first. They got the first look at it. That's part of the deal. If you join our subscriber base, you can do so over at KyleSeraphin.com. It's just my name.com. KyleSeraphin.com will get you over there. And you don't have to pay to be part of it. You can just join in, be part of the conversation. If you want to be a subscriber, you're going to get some things behind the scenes. You'll see some things before anybody else does, and maybe some things that nobody sees, period. So that's it. All right. And before we get started today, I've got sponsorees and all the things we're going to do, but I actually wanted to start with a moment just praying for my friend Jerry Perna, who is a wonderful, lovely lady, and she was in police state with me, and she had a nephew who took his own life because of January 6th stuff, and she just lost her brother, and she let me know that that is devastating to her family. And so we can all kind of be aware that there are real consequences to weaponized government, and it doesn't just stop with the people that it touches. I can imagine that all of you know in your own lives, if you lost your job, there are other people that would be upset about it. If you lost your freedom, that you would be facing down something really catastrophic, and so would the people around you. So we'll just pray for strength for Jerry and her family, Perna family, because that's tough. It's tough because you're fighting a monster that's so big. The Suspendables know a little bit about that. If you're new to the podcast and you're not familiar, we call ourselves the Suspendables because we were all suspended. That's what this S means on the badge. It means that there's an FBI agency that is out of control. That's what I used to do for a living. And the guys that are part of my little crew, my little life raft, if you will, have all faced down this monster that is so big that you don't know what you're going to do. You have to trust that God's going to be able to help you. And you hope that there are people in the fight that are going to help you too. It's a little bit amusing for those of you that are watching us on the video version of the podcast. You know that we go into the intro with a little clip from Dan Bongino, who had some really nice things to say. Probably doesn't say nice things about me as much anymore. But he can't take those things back, and I still take them to heart. And I'm appreciative of those who supported us when we were getting out there in the world, because it's dangerous and it is tough. And the DOJ is a big monster. And that's why people like Steve Baker, I think, are so courageous, because they continue to poke the belly of the beast. Me and the guys do the same thing. I like to think of it as fighting Godzilla with a pocket knife. And you might get squashed. There's a pretty decent chance, actually. The odds are in the favor of the monster that they will squash you. But the odds are also that you might be able to get one good cut and make them bleed and let them know that you're there. And in fact, one of the things that we thought about doing before we launched the podcast and the logo and the upside down badge and all that, we were actually thinking about having the badge being right side up, but instead of an eagle, it being a mosquito, which Garrett O'Boyle did a really fun mock-up of. Maybe we'll release those shirts at some point because it's funny. The Suspendables are the buzzing mosquito that kind of echoes around the face and the head of DOJ. We're the irritation, and Chris Ray's, we're the bee in his bonnet, and same for Merrick Garland. So we continue to push these kind of things. And somebody in the chat just said death by 1,000 cuts. Yeah, it's death by like 10 or 12 cuts, hopefully. And we just try to cut them as deep as we can into places that are where they're evil and wrong and unconstitutional. And that's what we're all about here. We care about the truth, and we care about the uncomfortable truth, even if it is upsetting to other people. So before we get into it too much deeper, let me say thanks to my friends over at My Patriot Supply. And you know, there's no better time than right now to be preparing, because we're looking down the barrel of maybe a Kamala Harris presidency, and I don't know that they won't steal it. So let me just say we appreciate that, folks. If you know what a threat looks like, and there's a lot of threats in the landscape, they're going to come after you, come after your family. You need to be ready. I'm ready. I rely on My Patriot Supply. I've got $1,000 worth of their food sitting in my cabinet right now. You can also get a deal on the MAGA 3-month emergency food supply. It comes with 33 different varieties. That's the big selling point. Multiple varieties. It comes with a creamy chicken flavored rice, old-fashioned spaghetti, broccoli cheese soup, on and on, a protein pack that has diced beef. It has flavorful chicken chunks, and then also a variety of beans. Plus you get snacks, 9 different fruits, vegetables, and snacks added on, about 2,500 calories per day to keep you ready for anything. And if you've ever tried to march or fight on an empty stomach, it's not very much fun. So make sure that you are ready to take care of your family. It starts with food you can depend on for up to 25 years. Go to preparelikekyle.com. Again, that's preparelikekyle.com. Save $300 on this deal right now, which is the MAGA 3-month emergency food kit. I got the other one that's 2,000 calories per day. Guys, preparelikekyle.com. Save $300 and you'll get fast and free shipping, which is a nice deal too. I hate paying for shipping. Anybody who knows that knows about, I just hate it. I'd rather put my money into the product, or at least lie to me. I'm okay with that comforting lie. I understand that I'm always paying for shipping, but one of the things that we do here, and our 5-star review leads on to it, is that we'll go places that other people can't go because we're 100% independent. And I don't know that everybody else understands that. When I tell you about us being independent as a podcast, not only does nobody tell us what we can or can't say, never has. We are willing to go places and turn down money because of some of the financial moves that my wife and I made as we were federal employees. As I was a federal employee and she was my spouse, we invested in places that allowed us to have some passive income, talk to people who know about money, because it wasn't something that I care about. I don't know about gold. It's not really a thing that I do. Like I said, I always stack brass and lead. But we tried to make good decisions so that we were insulated against making bad decisions because we had no other choice, because we were looking down the barrel of either I do this thing that I don't agree with, or I cannot feed these children that I have and I'm responsible for. So in your life, financial stability is one of the things that insulates you against making decisions in favor of tyranny. And that's hard for a lot of people to realize. Like, your financial security is also national security. It's the thing that blew my mind about the federal government. So many people with a security clearance. And we've got friends that are still in the world right now. I don't want to kind of poke them as much. I don't want them to be outed, actually, more than anything else, because the government will actually take that personally. But there's something kind of wild here. We have people that are not even citizens for 5 years getting top secret clearances in the United States, working in contracting jobs. That should blow your mind. If you served in the military and you know what it takes to get a top secret clearance, if you worked in the federal government, if you're a retired federal agent, it took years, like literally 2 years. They go and run down every history. And then imagine you're coming in from other countries and they don't have access to all the databases and all of your financial records and all the things that we do. It's very strange to see foreigners taking on our national security secrets. And, you know, they may become Americans, but a lot of them don't actually become Americans the way you'd think, especially when you've investigated people like the Chinese. Our citizenship is weaker now. And I'm seeing that in the chat, and that's exactly correct. So I'm going to get into the story. This is a cautionary tale for you all. This is not a personal attack time. I do that on Twitter. That's what I do there. That's just like a mean dinner party. This is a story that should let you know that you don't really have that much privacy in your life. If you think you do, you're wrong. And I know that because I used to investigate people for a living. And oftentimes it doesn't take a paid database. It doesn't take you having some secret abilities. It simply takes some diligence, a little bit of work. Even Google is very, very effective, but various search engines, you want to mix them up because you get different results. There is an unbelievable amount of information out there in the world. And what you're seeing on the screen right now is the South Cook News. I have no idea who South Cook News is. It's South Cook County. It's like a local news blog, maybe, or an online website talking about the city of Orland Park, which is a very, very small place. It's the home to Julie Kelly. Julie Kelly is a MAGA influencer, if you will. She bills herself as a J6 conspiracy theorist, and she writes reporting, and she's sometimes right, and she's often close to right, but misses the mark. And so over the years, especially when I first went public, I talked to her and I gave her information because she didn't have it. She doesn't have a background as an FBI investigator. She doesn't have any background on the things that she's talking about in a professional setting. Now, everybody can have an opinion. Of course they can. And if you like their opinion, knock yourself out. I don't care. But when people have a backstory and they come out of nowhere, and one of the things that it actually always kind of bothered me was that she's introduced as the great Julie Kelly. It doesn't bother me because I want to be introduced as the great Kyle Seraphin. I don't think I've earned that. That doesn't make any sense. But there's a concept. It's called the epithet. And an epithet is the way that they used to introduce people that told you things about this person in Greek epic poetry. It's a very old concept in Western civilization. So if you've never taken a course in that, that's what you missed out on, is learning some of these backgrounds. So they would call it like Achilles the brave, or Achilles the immortal, or Achilles the strong. You would add a thing after it. Alexander the Great conquered all of the known world. So when you add things to people's name, it's supposed to tell you something about them. But I don't know what is great about Julie Kelly. But I do know that a lot of the things that are publicly available about her are not what people actually think. And so I went down this rabbit hole. And the rabbit hole was, she took a stab at me and my buddies in June. She called us feds. She called us fed ops. And it caused us a lot of stress, a lot of sleep lost over it. It's not nice to have people say things that are objectively false about you. Like, I just kissed my kids goodbye as I walked up to my office upstairs in a rental house in Liberty Hill, Texas, where I live, which is right down the street from where that guy tried to break in somebody else's house. I walk up to go to work because I don't work for the federal government anymore, because the federal government job said that I was no longer worthy of it. They revoked my security clearance and said that there's no duty or responsibility as an FBI agent, as an FBI employee anymore. And that was effective on April 25th of 2022 in Las Cruces, New Mexico, signed off on by Jennifer Lee Moore, one of the people who I think is probably of the worst in this world. But it's amusing because she's kind of a Julie Kelly type character. It's opportunistic, not dumb, but not bright necessarily, and mean, vindictive, strange to me. Has an issue with some substance abuse, at least in Jennifer Moore's problem. Like, she was always referred to as Drunk Jenny to us because she was apparently coming in intoxicated. So I looked at all these things. I look at someone calling me a federal psyop. Now, apparently, according to new stuff, she said that I'm a DeSantis supporter. I don't know anything about DeSantis. I don't know about DeSantis other than he seems like a good governor, and I don't want to live in Florida. We're going to get into, sometimes the questions are complicated, but the answers are simple. It's a Dr. Seuss quote. I saw that today, and it's true. It's very simple. Yesterday, we exposed that Julie Kelly and her husband, who's a very wealthy guy relative to all of us, Julie Kelly's husband and her have donated over $143,000, and over 90% of those dollars have gone to Democrats. He's a top lobbyist in the state of Illinois, which is to say he's a top lobbyist in the city of Chicago. So that's what you have. It's a simple fact that she gave a certain amount of money to people. Some of those people include Hillary Clinton, in her name, donated according to the FEC, the Federal Election Commission's registry, which you can publicly search if you know what to do. And there's a lot of these databases, and this is the cautionary tale. Most of you are in the belief system that your personal life is your business and it is no one else's. And yet we do things every single day that are exposed to public scrutiny, whether you like it or not. Your tax records, by the way, how much your home is worth according to government audits, that's public record. I used to regularly use them. I use them on the pipe bomber case. I've used them to find subjects to find out who owns this home. Are they the landlord, or are they the person that we would actually want to go after? Do we need to reach out to a property management company? A lot of times you can find them. This is a literal receipt. Yes, that's correct, as you guys are saying in the chat. A literal receipt. This is a Schedule Alpha Papa itemized receipt. It usually has 3 individuals that have made donations to a specific campaign. In this case, the name of the campaign or committee is Hillary for America. That's Hillary Clinton. And Julie Kelly, aka Julie C. Kelly, gave $2,700 on 3/29/2016. These are not debatable. This is a fact. This is how that donation was registered. And it was for the primary. The thing that's really strange is that she was starting Federalist news writing at a very conservative organization for her online writings in the conservative space in November of 2016. and talking in favor of Donald Trump, and wrote articles to the effect of all my friends were going to never vote for Hillary because she had too much baggage. She was too corrupt. She was too problematic. She had Benghazi. She had the servers. She had the accusations of trying to smear Trump with Russia. A lot of these things were pushed out there. And yet, only months earlier, she gave money to her primary. And why would that be? Now, I have a theory, and I'm going to save it to the end of this little segment, and I will share it with you, because I do think it's the truth, based on everything that I've analyzed, and additionally, some of the behind-the-scenes things that I can't really go into because I don't want to reveal anybody. But these are actual itemized receipts of how this works. She gave money to Hillary Clinton. It's non-negotiable. She also gave money to Joe Biden. Now, we're talking about someone that goes on OAN, goes on Bannon's War Room, that spends a lot of time engaged in the MAGA movement, if you will. You guys already know about me. I'm not a MAGA guy. I'm an outcomes guy. So Donald Trump is he's the lesser of two evils for me. He's weak on abortion, which is a big deal to me. He's mediocre on guns. His son, Don Jr., is great on guns and understands it. And I hope that he's in his ear all the time. But the alternative is awful. So I'm voting against a Kamala Harris. I vote against a Joe Biden. I don't necessarily get thrilled about Donald Trump the way that many of you do. And you guys need me in your movement. You need me I'm not part of the movement, but I'm one of those people that's in the middle that is impressionable enough to say, I'm looking for the best choice. This is the Biden for President campaign. The donation that you see on there, the contribution, I hate using the word donation, is by Julie C. Kelly. Again, Orland Park, Illinois. I blurred out the address. That's publicly available. It's listed on the government forums. If you were to go and search this, you could find it if you know how to do it. That's why I got rid of the zip code. The way that the federal search works is that if you have an address, you can go into the FEC's database and you can search for everybody that's donated for anybody, for any political contribution whatsoever in your zip code, if you like. You'll get a huge return. The return takes up to 10 minutes to populate on the federal database here. It just takes a long time. You go, okay, I'm going to wait till it loads. And when it does, you're going to get all the results. And in my case, what I searched for was the specific address, which was also openly available. There were multiple different things called Blockhound. There are all these aggregator sites that are out there. And I get the feeling they're probably Chinese. But there are websites that are easily searchable in Google. They'll tell you family tree locations. I'll look up and I'll find that I have my siblings listed, my parents listed, my spouse listed, sometimes my kids, sometimes people that are not related to me. So they're not fail-safe. So what you do when you're doing these types of investigations, and I used to do this is called open source intelligence. It's available to anybody. When you are doing this, you can literally go out and take your name and plug it into a Google, plug it into a DuckDuckGo, plug it into Brave, do all this kind of thing. And then you want to see where these pieces of information overlap on multiple different sites. People Finder, whitepages.com, Spokeo. There were a bunch of them that came out of a Chinese hack of OPM. So a lot of my data is out there in a way that it probably shouldn't be. You'll find phone numbers that are probably accurate. You'll find email addresses that are historical and current. Sometimes they blur them and they want you to pay for them, sometimes not. Every single thing that I found out about Julie Kelly, which is not hidden, it's just out there and it's just, you got to go pick up all the crumbs. It's not private information, and neither is a lot of your information. So the fact that she donated to Joe Biden in December, on December 17th of 2019, that's when the Biden for President committee recognized her donation and reported it to the FEC. You'll see that there's also an Act Blue up there. And Act Blue gave a ton of money, maybe $13 million. That's an aggregator, so you can give money to Act Blue or you can give it direct to Joe Biden for president. These are all individual contributions in name by the person, Julie C. Kelly, okay? And there's some other Julie Kellys underneath, and you'll see, and they're different Julie Kellys. And so one of them's in Williamsburg, Virginia, and you shouldn't be able to read her address, but it doesn't matter. No one's going to go bother these people. Don't go bother these people. Their information is public. Your information is public. If you make a political donation, it is public information. The reason why it's so interesting to me that somebody who lives in Orland Park, who is the Julie Kelly that we all know, gave money to Joe Biden in 2019, in December of 2019, is because she published this book, which is a screed attacking the DeSantis types and the Never Trumpers and anybody that is a Republican and generally aligned in the conservative way, but said that they would never vote for Donald Trump. A lot of those people had their minds changed, not because of this book, but this book was called Disloyal Opposition. I'm not going to read it. I'm not interested in it. It doesn't sound good. I've read Julie Kelly's writing. I've read writing that's supposed to be Julie Kelly's, and I don't believe it actually is. I don't find her to be a compelling writer. She has sort of this stream of consciousness style that's very like listening to a mom blog, and it doesn't do it for me. Maybe it's interesting to you. But she wrote this book and it was published in July of 2020. Donation to Biden in December of 2019. There's like a 7-month gap in between the two of them. Are you telling me that she was giving money to Joe Biden and was writing this book at the same time, unless she wrote this book in less than 6 months and had her mind completely changed, which I don't know how that would happen. And this is at the end of Donald Trump's presidency, the 4 years that Donald Trump was president. So this is before January 6th. It's very interesting when you line up how the timeline works, because as far as November, like the week after Donald Trump was elected, she's writing for the Federalist. She still writes some things for the Federalist. I sent this stuff over to Sean Davis, who's the founder of the Federalist. And I said, "What? Like, you probably already knew this, but maybe you didn't." And his answer was, "If you're going to run little ops on Julie Kelly, just unfollow me." That's a hot take, guy. Did you know? Maybe he did. The problem with money is that it's fungible. And the problem with Democrats is that projection is sort of the name of the game. I'm not sure that Julie Kelly's a Democrat. I don't actually know. I called this a house divided because you cannot be a house divided in a successful marriage. If you have dramatically different ideas about things that mean something to you, values, it doesn't work. So that's a move, a mark in the category of likely to be aligned with her husband. Her husband is a big Democrat donor. He's a big Democrat activist, and he's a lobbyist, and most of his clients are Democrats. That's where the money is for him. He lives outside of Chicago. But the house divided argument, it's possible. It's also possible that she set herself up to be one thing that she's not. And this is the story. This is where I started getting into the story. Now, you can't find these pieces anywhere except the Genetic Literacy Project, which is a really sketchy organization in and of itself. If you go down the rabbit hole, which I did, you find out that the Genetic Literacy Project is basically funded by Bayer Monsanto money. There was a $100,000 startup fund to be able to create this organization that supposedly says science, not feelings, not emotion, whatever. So they run this whole thing, and they are a pro-GMO, a pro-pesticide organization that is run by a guy who used to be a disinformation operative for Philip Morris in the cigarette industry, in the tobacco industry. So that's where Genetic Literacy Project comes in. They're all about science, but they all have this like really aggressive bend towards you should get genetically modified. You can eat food with Roundup on it. It's no big deal. Never mind the $11 billion that our founding grant company, Bayer Monsanto, gave us, and the $11 billion in settlements they did for cancer. So we're talking about something that is sketchy on its origins. And there's a lot of people that have dug into this particular group, Genetic Literacy Project, because they are concerned that it's trying to undermine the organics movement. Julie Kelly was trying to undermine the organics project. And so what you see here is an article. And the article says it's her journey from being a suburban mom and chef to a GMO and science advocate. And she says it in her own words. Now, all that's really important to me. It's important because she's telling you who she is as she comes on the scene. Okay? I'm going to read some of the stuff from the article. In her own words, this was dated May 12th of 2015, before getting on the Federalist. So let's get into a little bit of it. She basically says, my backstory is this thing. She tells the story of Aaron Brockovich, and then she says, just kidding, not really. My journey is less dramatic. I was sitting and watching Top Chef, the guy from Top Chef, whose name is Tom Colicchio. I don't know Tom Colicchio and anything, but he's a leftist. I looked up his Twitter, and he's definitely on the political left aggressively. He's a celebrity chef. He appears on MSNBC, and he starts talking about organic foods, and he starts talking about things that are interesting to him in the cooking space. And she was very offended by that. He went on a tirade about the 2014 Farm Bill that cuts money to food stamps, and he thinks that there should be food stamps because he's a liberal. And so she said he was broadly attacking Republicans, and that upset her. And she said, why is this cook lecturing me about politics and food stamps? Pot, kettle, pot. You're now in the political space, and you're theoretically a cook. And this guy did the same thing. And this is how you started she started her writing career after being a mom as a Twitter beef. But it's also relevant to note, because this stuff is not private information. It is publicly available to you. She calls herself a suburban mom because that lets you think that she's like just like you. But she's not just like you, most of you. She has 3 homes, I'm told. 2 of them are in Florida. I didn't look them up. I don't care right now. Maybe I will. The other one is in Chicago. It's outside of Chicago in Orland Park, which she states everywhere. It says she's Julie Kelly. She has a husband named John. She has 2 kids. It's very easy to source this information. It's in her byline at the bottom, her little bio blurb. Just like they always say, I'm a husband, a father, an American citizen, and a former FBI agent. Like, there's a little thing. People ask you how you want to be credited. That's what hers says. And so she's Julie Kelly from Orland Park. But then you find out that her home was purchased for like almost $1.4 million in 2011 because they have a lot of money. They're not necessarily just some suburban mom, some folksy person who just got into the space. Her husband is one of the most powerful lobbyists in the city of Chicago, the state of Illinois, which is the place for people like Rahm Emanuel, Barack Obama, who they donated to. So this is actually kind of not that genuine. It's not a genuine statement. So she plays this folksy game. I'm just doing these cooking classes or whatever. You have a 10,000 square foot house. They have a 2,000 square foot putting green in their backyard. No pool. That's an interesting kind of moment to try to act like you're just like me when you have a putting green that's bigger than most people's homes. I don't think you're just like me. And you can be rich in this country. I'm familiar with and friends with people who have a lot of money. I don't care. That's not interesting. If you represent yourself as being one of the people when you are not, that's silly. That's not particularly good. All right. So this goes on and on. She basically she wrote up an op-ed because she was furious. This is her story telling it in the Genetic Literacy Project. She was furious that this guy, Tom Colicchio, was saying that GMOs are bad, that Monsanto and pesticides on your food is not good for you. And so she wrote an op-ed. Now, you have to also understand that her husband runs a company, a lobbying company that's called All Circo. And that's also publicly available. If you literally type in Julie Kelly's husband, it'll come up with John J. Kelly Jr. And he's the only one. And John J. Kelly Jr. and Julie Kelly share the same address. This is how I was able to find their SEC donations. And every one of his contributions is listed to his company, which is called All Circo, ALL-CIRCO. All Circo Incorporated. He sometimes lists himself as being self-employed, but he's a lobbyist, and he's a rich lobbyist. He makes a lot of money, 7 to 8 figures, hard to say. But I'll show you some documentation from 2020 showing that he had made over $12 million in a period of 8 years. So he makes good money. You're allowed to do that too. The thing is that one of his biggest clients is this company. It is an agribusiness company, and this agribusiness company also is interested in pushing their brand. I'm sure things that are interesting to them include pesticides. It's the second thing they list. It's called the Archers Daniels Midland Company, ADM, Alpha Delta Mike. And ADM is almost $1 billion a year, like $93 billion a year. Okay. They receive they have a revenue stream of $93 billion a year. They're a big company. And there's other stuff in here. Aetna, which is a big insurance corporation. Blackstone is another one listed here. BMG Money Loans. BMG Money Loans is like a payday loan, sort of predatory loan company. There's a whole bunch of other stuff. They advocate on behalf of the White Sox. He's got a bunch of clients, and they're proud of him. Oracle, big tech company, very left-leaning. Quest Diagnostics, you guys have heard them, pharmaceutical or in the healthcare space. A lot of this stuff. Noresco. So there's some food companies. There's a lot of big business that comes in and out of Chicago. But when you suddenly, as a suburban housewife who's totally incensed that a celebrity chef is telling you something that you don't like, decide that you are going to go and attack said celebrity chef, and you're doing so on the good nature of your character, and it's totally on the up and up, you're doing so because he's talking about GMOs being a problem, and then you start writing these pieces. And you can't find these pieces anymore. They were all published at Forbes. A couple of them were published by the San Diego Union Tribune. Some of them were published by the LA Times, and they were essentially saying, Roundup won't kill you. Roundup's not bad for you. Totally, you can eat food. Roundup won't stop you from getting pregnant. You can eat Roundup-covered food, and it's totally normal. I want you guys to think about how that's going to resonate with the conservative moms that you know in your life. I don't think it resonates with mine. My wife aspires to be more crunchy than she even is, and she's pretty crunchy. She bakes her own sourdough bread. She's trying to get us out of the food business. She goes to places like Good Ranchers, like many other people advertise for. She's trying to find out, how do we get hormone-free meats? So they're less and less interested in government intervention and big pharmaceutical and big agriculture. And she's trying to sell this. So she writes all these pieces, and she co-signs her pieces with a guy named Henry I. Miller. You can find him on Twitter. He has a PhD and an MD, from what I can tell, and seems very bright. He's associated with the Hoover Institute. That's at Stanford. That's where all of his pieces are listed, but you can't click through any of those pieces. You can't click through the pieces because they've all been removed. Most of them were published by Forbes and Forbes.com. And Forbes did a retraction and pulled all of the articles down from Julie Kelly and Henry I. Miller in 2017, when the New York Times showed that the pieces that they were submitting to be published in Forbes and other places were substantially similar to position pieces that Monsanto had written in favor of their products. And so they were essentially getting a ghost-written product that they were putting their names to for credibility. This regular suburban mom and this very educated PhD MD associated with Stanford University, these two people were going to tell you and shill for big agriculture. And you can imagine that didn't become very profitable. I have to imagine that this was a very low dollar hustle for her. I don't know what it paid, but it can't be great. And at some point in November of 2016, along with Sean Davis, who runs the Federalist, she started writing MAGA pieces. She started going and getting in favor of Donald Trump stuff. And that's an infinitely easier market to tap into. And she did. But she did so while still donating to Democrats because that's where the bread and butter is. And all of this is to say, I did this in 30 minutes on Google and some other search engines, nothing that you couldn't do in your own house, nothing that is outside of your capabilities of looking up. I found the address for these people. It's not like you probably can find yourself on there if you spend time. Give yourself 30 or 45 minutes and find out that you're not a private person. Not as much as you want. And if you care about privacy, go read Michael Bazzell. We talked about this on a Twitter space last night. Extreme Privacy is the book. You have to start from the scratch. You have to get rid of your cell phones. You have to get rid of your home. You have to move into a place and buy it under a trust with a name that doesn't associate with you, and you can do it blindly. And there's a lot of ways you can go do this. It's a pain in the ass if you want to be private. There is a myth that you have privacy in this country and that somebody is doxing you because they've shared your private information. I put a picture of her home out the other day because it's enormous. It's a beautiful home. It looks like twice as big as the house that I grew up in. The house I grew up in was 5,000 and change square feet. We moved from California to Texas and it was enormous. And we were the second biggest house in the little town we lived in. And Julie's is twice that size. And I used to live in that house. I remember how big it was. Most of you don't live in a 5,000 square foot house. A 10,000 square foot house with 7 bathrooms it could swallow up multiple times over my friend Garrett O'Boyle, who really put some skin in the game and has 1 bathroom in his little house that he lives in, 1,600 square feet with his family of 6. So my point is don't feel poor me for these people. And she came at me last night and she was texting me in the middle of the night at like midnight, threatening me and kind of funny. She's like, "Mark this, I'm coming for you." It's like, okay. My stuff's out there, but I don't have the skeletons that you do. I didn't do Democrat donations. The only political donation you'll ever find in Kyle Serafin's name, if you could even find it, is $50 to Gary Johnson in 2016. I'll just save you the trouble. That's what it is. I wanted to show you this. This comes from the Chicago, what is this called? It's called All Chicago, I think. Crane's Chicago Business, a Crane family brand. Okay. Lobbyists paid $1.5 million in 6 months to lobby Cook County officials. So about $500,000 in 2013 was being paid out to John Kelly over at Al Circo. So that was being covered. And then they also did a thing, which I found, this is from A.D. Quigg in the government section. Here's how much the top Chicago lobbyists make. Increasing scrutiny. Political money game has not slowed the cash roll. It's coming from October 2nd of 2020. And I've got that on the screen right now. Chicago lobbyists have raked in a total of $171 million from clients in the past 8 years. This is what the Chicago Board of Ethics data dating back to 2012 says. So those are the 8 years worth of payments into lobbyists in the area. Among the top paid lobbyists over that stretch are Al Circo's John Kelly Jr., Julie Kelly's husband, $12.3 million. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And it makes sense that he works with Democrats because he's in Chicago. Like, that's what's there. The complicated question with the simple answer, right? Sometimes the questions are complicated. The answers are simple. All she has to say is, I donated this money because I believed in those candidates. And then let her fan base decide what it means. There's none of that. What we got last night, this was her brother. Apparently Jason Copeland is a brother. He told me that I've effed with the wrong family. I think that's really funny. Apparently I'm a has-been. And then he let me know that he's 6'5", 250 pounds, and he's a Marine, and he went through Parris Island in 1994. And he was an air traffic controller Marine for 4 years. I'm quaking. I've spent the last 15 to 20 years of my life training for violence. Knock yourself out, bro. If that's the thing that you think makes sense, is physically confronting somebody over Twitter, knock yourself out. My family is well insulated. Julie Kelly said this is the beginning of my problems. She said I'm about to find out. She texted me some other stuff. It's silly. It's absurd. The fact of the matter is you gave money. She probably knew this was coming. She probably understood that this is a real liability for her because her husband makes a bunch of money. And I'm fairly confident that her husband probably donated in her name. But here's the problem. If somebody donates in your name, it's a federal crime. Dinesh D'Souza did jail time for that. You guys may remember. That's the strike against him. So if you donate money and represent it as not being you, it's called a straw donation. And there's a federal statute associated with it. And you can do jail time for it and a felony, depending on the aggregation of it. And we're talking about Julie donations going back to 2003. In all fairness, she did give to Bush Cheney. And she did give to Elise Stefanik $1,000. But of the $143,000, like 130 plus thousand of it are all to Democrats. And that includes Barack Obama for Senate, Barack Obama for president. It includes the Clintons, or the Clinton for Victory Fund, Hillary Clinton, and also Joe Biden, which is now, the Joe Biden money is all now called the Harris Victory Fund, and her husband has been giving to that, going back about $30,000 in this cycle, if my memory serves. Don't quote me on that one. But you guys can, I'm telling you, if any journalists are like, oh, do you have receipts on this? Sure, I'll send you the link. I'll send it to you. You just have to be respectful of not putting out the address. I'm not trying to have people show up at someone's house. That's silly. But that house is big, and it would take 20 minutes to find you in it. Unlike my house, where you'd come and find us right away because there's people in every room, because we have 6 people living in a regular size American suburb. My wife is a suburban mom in a real way. In any case, I suspect that her husband probably donated in her name because it allowed him to donate more things as an individual and show that the family's united. A house divided does not stand. That's probably true. But if she says that, she's basically telling people that, yeah, I actually don't agree with my husband politically, and it's now going to make him into a potential felon. I don't think the DOJ would go after him because the DOJ doesn't go after Democrats. We know that. But do you really want to take that chance when your husband is a multi-million-dollar earner and she's probably making somewhere between $250,000 and $500,000 a year on Twitter and Substack and so on? We're just basing on the average number. It's about 10% are paid subscribers. If you look into that, that's about 300 and change thousand. Twitter, mixed bag, but she's got 700,000 followers. It's monetized. You can make a lot of money on that. You can. There are people that are making $1,500 per 2 weeks. Not this guy, by the way, but people are making $1,500 per 2 weeks with 100,000 followers. So if you extrapolate those things up, it could be $250,000 or more a year. Twitter, there's some real big money to be made, especially if you're doing outrage porn, especially if you're doing things where you're talking about stuff that doesn't mean anything. All right, that's as far as I wanted to go on all that. I know that was long form. I wanted to explain it because it's important that people understand that it's easy to find you, insulate yourself if you choose, or just be aware that your data is probably not private. A lot of it is not. Doesn't matter if you use a VPN. If you bought your home, there's a property record with your name on it, most likely. If someone knows your zip code, or if you tell people on every single post you do that you live in Orland Park is a very small zip code, which is why this article popped up, because these people went and covered my story. They didn't attribute it to me, but they went and pulled the FEC records on their own, and they found out who all the donors are in Orland Park, in that little zip code. And it was quite easy, apparently. And that's why you end up with a picture of Julie Kelly right next to Kamala Harris. I don't think she donated money to Kamala Harris. That's not what I saw on the records. The records and the receipts say that it was the Biden for president campaign. It's not the same. But that has morphed now, and money is fungible. And so here's the thing you have to realize. The reason it upset me is because she came after Bill Shipley, and this did actually get personal. She came after Bill Shipley and she came after Steve Baker. And when you come after Steve Baker, who's facing down the government and potential prison time, and he's got skin in the game, and say that you're the original J6 reporter when he was actually at January 6th and there on January 5th, I don't believe you. That's not cool. And the second thing is, she said, if you're giving money to Bill Shipley, you're funding his attacks on me. Well, if you're giving money to Julie Kelly, because money is fungible, you're freeing up money for her husband to give to Democrats, which he does by the tens of thousands. That's the answer. And she can acknowledge it. Like I said, she's not going to. I don't think she'll touch it. She's going to make some vague threats. She did a whole poor me thing. I call it cry bullying. I actually called out Taylor Loren. I said, this is Taylor Loren style cry bullying. And Taylor Loren, who we showed on the program yesterday, showed up on Twitter and was like, leave me out of this, guys. I literally don't even care. And I got a literally out of Tay-Tay. It's so funny. All right. How about people that are doing good work, that are using your money to do the good things that you actually expect them to do? My friends at Catholic Vote, you guys can support them by going to catholicvote.org. Get the loop, get good information. It's solid reporting. It's conservative. It's verifiable. I've met them. I stand behind what they are doing and what they say. If you guys want to get that, go to catholicvote.org/loop. You can just read it, or you go to catholicvote.org and sign up for the loop, which is even better. It's really easy. I'm looking at their main page. It's a yellow box that says stay in the loop, and you put your email and your zip code in, and then they will do it. One of the things they're doing is geofencing, which is kind of interesting. You can buy that kind of information, and they are geofencing the people that go to churches in America that are not showing up and registered to vote, and trying to get them registered so that Christians turn the tide in this election. Catholic Vote is an outcome-based group, and so we recommend them 100%, and they support us, and that's one of the reasons why we are less cancelable than many people. We are independent. They've never once told me what I could or couldn't say. They've never once told me what I should or shouldn't say. So I just operate with impunity, and they keep us going. Their top story today is talking about the victims of Abbey Gate, which is a very big story, and we'll talk about it. The fact is that the Biden-Harris administration needs to be reminded of their failures, and there are many of them, and so I hope that they are. And I'm glad Donald Trump's doing it. Let me do a couple of stories that are longer than this today, or outside of this little. It's not really petty. It's more of like a cautionary tale, I think, but it's still worth hearing. Okay, Kamala Harris wants to unmute Donald Trump. This is analysis coming from CNN. This is kind of what we normally do, folks. So back to our normal programming. What do they want to do? They want to unmute him because I think Kamala Harris and the people that are advising her got the wrong impression of who Donald Trump is over many years because he's slowly morphed. And what we've seen is that Donald Trump has actually been more sophisticated of late. He's not my favorite guy in the world. I don't mind telling you that. But that doesn't mean that he's not getting better and he doesn't do better things. And he did a great job when he was up against Biden. And I think he'll do fine letting Kamala Harris destroy herself. The longer that she has to expose herself in front of the press in a long form debate, unmuted, she's pretty polished. She's an attorney, but Trump is older. He better act wiser, and he should let her hang herself with all the things that she has to say. She'll come off as vindictive and petty and mean, especially when you have a guy who's being attacked by the federal government the way my friends are. It turns out that is an inherently sympathetic situation for a lot of people because it looks ridiculous. It looks third world. And so the argument is that he basically doesn't have the ability to control himself, although I think all that we've seen of late is that he's very likely to. He can bring up that people who listened to her angry rhetoric took a shot at him and hit him in the air and killed a man. Right? He has a very strong position that he can take on this. And I hope he does. I hope that it is an unmuted Trump who just listens quietly. His best lines, absolute best lines in the Biden debate were when he let Biden do what Biden does, which is ramble and bamble and say things that don't make any sense. And as he did so, when Trump was done, he crushed him because Trump is quick on his feet. He's not as quick as he was, but he's definitely quicker than some of these people who are not used to facing any scrutiny. And he said, I don't know what he said, and I don't think he knows what he said. Mic drop. This kind of stuff. The other thing, I don't want to be here. I'm being attacked for it. But I have to be because her policies are really bad. And there's infinite amount of clips right now that you can find on social media of people talking about how bad and the border wall, and that was Donald Trump being a racist and all this other nonsense, and all those things that he called out were accurate. The country's been invaded. It has done negative things for a whole bunch of people in this country. And so we've got housing crises, we've got financial issues, we've got inflation, we've got mortgage rates are much higher than they were. Like all the things that are bad. So now we're getting this woman who is literally an incumbent. She is actually in the White House as part of the regime. She's number 2 in theory. That's what we're led to believe. That's what her experience is in. And she's rolling out plans campaigning against her own administration. And that is where Donald Trump needs to hammer her. So this is ABC talking about something that I think is quite amusing. The Harris campaign is releasing a new ad highlighting their plan to build 3 million homes. Listen, folks, I've seen the government build homes on Indian reservations and giving homes to people who didn't buy the homes, who didn't earn the homes, who can't afford to pay for the homes. They end up looking like all the homes that they've already done that in when they've been subsidized. It's called slums. They are called slums. They are called housing projects, and they are a really good place to find criminals. I used to spend an exclusive amount of my time in D.C., a huge percentage of it, sitting in the worst neighborhoods that exist in America. They have some of the highest murder rates in America. We did a comparison the other day of murder rates in U.S. cities. 39 out of 100,000. The highest murder rate was in Washington, D.C. Higher than Chicago, higher than New Orleans, higher than anywhere else that you guys are living. The percentage per capita of murders happen in D.C., and they happen in a few neighborhoods. They're not in all the neighborhoods. They're not in the nice neighborhoods. They're not where the pipe bomber was walking. They're happening in the garbage neighborhoods. And those are almost exclusively funded by government money. And you can tell because they were built and they were abandoned and they were never maintained because the contractor got their money. And that was the entire purpose. Everybody thinks that the goal is the housing. Everybody thinks that the goal is to do the mission. The goal is to pay someone to do the mission and get out. That's what a self-licking ice cream cone is. That's the inefficiency of the federal government. So they're going to put 3 million houses on the market in 4 years to contain inflationary pressures. Do you know what happens when the government gets involved in anything? The prices go up because they suck at it. They absolutely suck at it. They are the worst. This is the dumbest plan. They're going to propose an idea to give $25,000 to new homeowners. How about to people that don't have a home right now, like me and my family? We're renting. Are you going to give $25,000 to me? No, you're going to make the average price of houses go up by $25,000. This is what happens when you put money in. And more importantly, and I hope Donald Trump hammers this home, they are trying to buy votes. They tried to buy them with student loan forgiveness. It wasn't theirs to forgive. People owed something. Taking away personal responsibilities is un-American. Taking away and giving you $25,000 from the government so the government can go and have you help buy a house. The government doesn't have any instinct. Somebody already owns the damn house. She made a whole argument about property taxes. Apparently, she doesn't know that whoever owns the property pays the taxes. And if it's a new home buyer or it's a development company, they're still paying the damn taxes on it, people. That's what happens. And property taxes don't go to the federal government. So she's talking about trying to raise money for state governments. It doesn't make any sense. The hope is that nobody evaluates their claims more than surface level, which is the exact same thing that I'm trying to tell you guys about being a skeptic. Whoever it is you're listening to, be a skeptic. Are they the person they say they are? Does that matter? It might not matter to you. It may not matter what the source of the information is if the information is good, but vet the information, including stuff that comes from me. I'll tell you my source. This is ABC News. I'm reading it from them. I believe that I've heard her say this as well. So do you. So that sounds like it probably checks out. But you should start from the position of, is Seraphin lying to me? Is anybody that I want to listen to lying to me? Do they have an agenda? Are they Tucker Carlson? I like Tucker Carlson. He seems brilliant. Every time I've heard him speak, it's very moving. He's very good at his craft. He's also very wealthy. He has a ton of money. So does he need to do that? Maybe not. But people who operate that have hundreds of millions of dollars are very different than you and I, mostly. Some of them are very blue collar. I think that's the appeal that people see in Donald Trump, is that he still eats hamburgers and he walks around and does regular stuff. But he's kind of a weird dude. I mean, he wears a super long tie and he has a brand that doesn't make sense to me a lot. It's not the thing I wanted. He's very funny when he wants to be. Be skeptical. Ask the questions. And we shouldn't attack people for saying, listen, you love this person. You love Lila Rose. That was another person that was getting attacked yesterday. I didn't look into it. I was busy doing other things. Oh, does she spend her money on the things she's supposed to do? I don't actually know. My instinct is I hope so. But I'm happy to be wrong. Like, people spend money in charities. When they get money, they act differently. And many of you guys know this. Think of friends who have been, like, not lottery winners, people that have actually had real success, that have gone out there and turned a business into something that is very profitable. And suddenly they start guarding it like the precious. And everybody is coming from them because people are coming from all sides. Imagine how hard it must be being Donald Trump, where every single person is coming to him with a handout. It's the one value that I think me and the Suspendables offer to that campaign, is that, one, we don't want anything from them. Never have. I want nothing from them. I don't want any money. I don't want notoriety. I'm not interested in helping them other than crafting policies on what I'm interested in, which is what I know about, which is the FBI. A lot of people are out there saying, hey, can you come on my podcast? Can you help me do my book? Sean Ryan just did an interview with him. I'm not interested. I don't even find it compelling. Theo Vaughn did one. I couldn't listen to it for more than a few minutes. I know what Donald Trump thinks. Everybody wants to grab onto your brand. And so he's dealing with that. So evaluate these people, because they're doing the same thing to you. What do you want from me? How do I get what I need from you? It's a cynical way to look at the world, but if you're not doing that, we are in the world, even if we're not of it, and we are going to be dealing with cynical types doing cynical things. Some people are scamming you. Some people are being truly honest. There's some real honest operators out there. You have to suss it out for yourself. I can't tell you who they are. But if I have evidence that somebody is not operating in good faith and they don't want to address it and they want to turn around and threaten me, that's a real thing. Let's talk about some other awful ideas. This also came from ABC. I just saw this on the headline and I couldn't get away from it. This is the record that the Biden-Harris administration has to defend. LGBTQ plus students banding together to fight anti-LGBTQ plus bans. What? There's a little girl, I don't know, maybe that's a boy, dressed up as a girl. I don't even know anymore. It's moms dressing their kids in rainbow stuff. We've got a family member that does this too. It's atrocious. It's absolutely disgusting to see people using their kids as political pawns. It's why you won't see my kids. I have 4 of the cutest children you've ever seen in your life, and I'm not going to share them with you. I'm not going to share my wife with you either. You don't get to know anything about her. That's not what she's interested in. She's an actual suburban housewife. She's not going to write editorials that I'm going to go muscle the Wall Street Journal to run for me. And I don't have that much clout. But when they see these kids being used as political pawns, which is what I'm seeing, when Florida parent Rose Taylor, the worst people, Steve Friend calls them, the worst people in America are liberal white women. They're willing to use their kids. They're willing to castrate their children and their futures. For what? They're willing to castrate their kids for clout with their social group. Women, you guys know how this works. I've spent a lot of time around women. I love women. I want to protect women. I also want to protect women sometimes from themselves. And some of the worst instincts is that group mentality. Even those of you who know the right answers will sometimes be swayed because of the popular opinion of those around your friend group. You know what I'm talking about. My wife and I talk about this all the time. It's a regular discussion that women are able to be bullied into things socially that men would not. And it's one of the reasons why I have a problem with women in this sort of voting apparatus. Like, I love women lobbying their husbands. I think that's the righteous way to do things. And that's super, super conservative right wing. It's staunchly ridiculous to people. I think it's how you end up getting things back on order. You have to have one leader and one follower. It's the way it works. But here's the thing. The follower has a say. Their degree of followership, as a follower, as an enlisted guy in the military, I understood that. This is disordered Florida parents stepping up to try to abuse their kids. But it's out there, and that should be the record they run. Let me just tell you, as an enlisted guy, when I was working in the military, you can lead from the rear as a follower. You can help influence policy, but at the end of the day, the leader has to make the decision and you have to stand behind it. And sometimes you eat a lot of dirt for that. Anybody who knows what I'm talking about, who's been punished for it, man, I've been dropped on my face an awful lot. I've got a lot of Texas dirt and sweat in my life from getting dropped because of bad lieutenant and staff sergeant leadership and tech sergeant. It's fine. That's just what you do. You can also say, listen, sir, because I used to do this. As a 30-year-old man, I used to go and talk to a 21, 22-year-old academy graduate and say, sir, here's the deal. Your decision goes. I've got some more life experience. If you ever want to ping something against me, I'll never share it with anybody else. I'm happy to give you advice, and then you can do with it what you like. And I'll always back up your play. You're not going to see me go against it in public. Knock yourself out. And they would ask me sometimes, and they wouldn't. Women, you have the same ability. You can go to the men in your life and you can push things and they will listen to you. I guarantee it, because men, we love listening to women. It's what our whole world is about. It's disorder to think otherwise. But this is my concern, is what's going on out there, seeing these like women off the chain, and they're almost always on the left, and they feminize the men. And this is the problem. And you guys know, if you listen to this is my long-term thing. It's not because I dislike childless cat ladies. It's because I think childless cat ladies are unhappy and they are not sure how to make themselves happy. And unfortunately, they may have missed their opportunity to do so. So the safest thing for them to do is maybe tuck in the airborne rule, which is hold what you got. You're coming in for landing. It's probably going to hurt. Just suck it up. We were talking about privacy earlier. Let me do one more little read. Who's out there? Let's do my buddies at Patriot Coolers too. We'll say Patriot Coolers is our friend. They are our friend. They started in February of 2022, going all the way back. February of 2022. They started paying us. PatriotCoolers.com, promo code KYLE, save yourself 10%. This is one of the coolers that I got when I first started signing them on as a sponsor. My oldest cooler is from 2017. Somewhere in the middle of the Julie Kelly Federalist period, right? Great company. We use them on duty. I used to carry them with me when I did my job for the Bureau. If you guys want to get a great tool that will last as long as you don't lose it, and when you lose it, you will cry. It's an outstanding product, and you will always be happy with it. They ship out of Houston, Texas. They're made like every other double-walled insulated cooler. They're all made in Chinese. If you guys don't know that, they all are. Everybody does. But Patriot Coolers, American company, loves Americans, gives money back to vets, gives money to the Kyle Seraphin Show. Promo code KYLE, save yourself 10%, $50 or more is the free shipping. They never told me what to say, by the way, for their advertisements. They're like, yeah, I'll go promote our stuff. So I just talk about the things I like on that. Let's keep pushing forward just a little further, because we were talking about privacy. This is a significant decision that came up. I did a Twitter space with a couple of attorneys, people who I trust to give me the straight dope on it. We talked about this for 2 hours. The Fourth and the Fifth Circuit have both ruled on geofence warrants, which is something that you guys will hear about if you follow the January 6 stories, and you should, because they are a test run for the government using invasive tools to come after your privacy and to come after your personal autonomy. The Fifth Circuit ruled properly. The Fourth Circuit in Colorado ruled improperly, I believe. And hopefully the Supreme Court comes in and weighs down on the side of civil liberties. The Fifth Circuit ruled that geofence warrants are inherently unconstitutional, which is a very important step. The case you're looking for is called United States versus Smith, and it ruled that geofence warrants are inherently unconstitutional, specifically because they put themselves into the position of the person who could be receiving the geofence warrant. When they get these warrants, when they are written, the fact that you are carrying around a spyware device in your pocket, like most of us are, I've got 2 of them on my desk right now. We all have these things. We're all rolling around with a device that is constantly collecting information on us. It might as well be them looking at a CT scan of our life. When they get the geofence warrant returns, it tells who you are, unique ID. It says where you were and how you moved. And if they get deeper into it, there are even more things they can get out. It's like a digital fingerprint of who you are and where you are in the world and how you operate. I've been told that there are algorithms that can run against the stuff that's collected by your phones that will tell you how tall you are, which hand you write with, your general college education level, because they can tell based on your vocabulary and the speed of your typing, how intelligent you are. That's a lot of stuff to know about somebody. If you have a limp, how you walk, your gait can be analyzed from the way that your phone hangs out in your pocket. It tells your pattern. and what other phones you associate with. So it tells your whole circle. Looking into your phone for a few minutes, and this is what the court said, is that basically a 2-hour look into your phone is like looking into your whole life. It's the equivalent of getting a CT scan or an x-ray. It looks very, very deeply, not just this like cursory little glance. And so they ruled that these things are essentially general warrants, which are basically, according to case law, prohibited. But they're still using them, and there's still case law that's coming out of it. So be aware. If you're interested in your privacy, if you're interested in keeping things that are your information hidden, a VPN is not going to do it. You're going to have to get really radical. And otherwise, you can also do what most of us do, which is realize that you have traded convenience for your privacy. And that's true all the time. If you let a stranger come into your home, you pay someone to come and clean your house, it's convenient, but they now have access to your stuff. So there's always a trade-off. We're always trading privacy and we're trading the convenience. It's convenient to make a lot of money on Twitter. It's convenient to make a lot of money writing articles and pieces, but you reveal things about yourself when you do that, to tie back to the beginning. There's a trade-off. As long as you're willing to make that bargain and you do so willingly, I'm fine with it. I'm a libertarian on that stuff. It's worth knowing. And for those of you saying get a Faraday bag, commercial Faraday bags, generally speaking, fail you. And if you guys want to ever test a Faraday bag, I gave this information out free last night to the Twitter space. I'll do it again. You could put your phone in a Faraday bag, leave it on, and go text it, and then leave it for a couple of hours and see when it actually leaks in there. Because if that phone gets the text message, then you know that it is still receiving signals, even if they're just minimal. They're bursts, but they happen. The only way that I found that you can appropriately Faraday your phone is to wrap it in tinfoil and put it in some kind of a metal casing. You need multiple skins to be able to keep the RF out. The RF is the radio frequencies, and you are leaking radio frequencies from your Bluetooth, from your Wi-Fi, from the actual 4 different antennas that handle the 4 different bands in your 4 and 5G wireless. Double Faraday bag probably won't do it either. Just let you know. The signals sneak in. So you need to be able to do something that's real simple. When I want to do it, I wrap it. You have to take the battery out too, because the battery is still draining and giving little microbursts of where you're at. People have seen this. This is plenty of documentation out there. People going and getting ad-aware information from places they had their phone turned off and was sitting in their pocket, but it went by and pinged against Wi-Fi or went pinged against somebody's Bluetooth and was able to actually pick up locations. So you can't hide from everybody, and you don't need to if you're operating in the honest, but you might as well obscure it from the government as best you can, and hopefully our courts continue to do the right things, which is what we're all hoping for. Let me do a last little update here as we kind of wrap up for the day. Yesterday, I talked to you about this story, the subject of the pipe bomb investigation. The suspect is what Steve Baker says. In federal investigations, we call them the subject of the investigation. The person who was in the hoodie that the FBI has told us was, in fact, the pipe bomber. I don't know any more than you do that person dropped pipe bombs. What I know is that's what's been pushed out in public. This is interesting because after we went live with it, that story that we covered, which I was a contributor to in so much as Steve Baker asked me questions and I gave him answers, and he mostly got it right. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I read some of it and I was like, that wasn't exactly what I said, but that's okay. I don't know if he was recording it or if he was just jotting down notes, but Steve's pretty good. And he got the gist of what I've said. By the way, that's the same thing for Julie Kelly or Carrie Pickett or any of the other writers that I've worked with. Unless they do a verbatim quote that they copied, I have a pretty good idea what I said and what I didn't say. And oftentimes they get it wrong. They get it wrong enough that it's like, it doesn't make any, I know that it's not me saying it. In any case, Steve was 96% correct on what he quoted me on. So good for him. They put an editor's note because they updated the story. As they pushed that story out, what happened is congressional investigators, which are just attorneys, and many of them are gay, and they work for the Republican Party, which is really weird because they're all gay. There's this gay mafia inside the Capitol that kind of like handles information on the back end. Non-elected, by the way. That's real deep state stuff too. And these people basically got shaken out of their slumber and were like, oh crap, Steve Baker published this thing. We need to go and now tell them about more stuff. And so you can see an editor's note, which I wanted to go and tell you. Editor's note says there was an earlier version of the story that said it appeared the bombing suspect interacted with the police. After publication, a congressional investigator, again, one of these attorneys with access to a camera angle that has not been made public, reached out and told the Blaze that a similarly attired person the suspected bomber comes out of the alley and crosses. It's not the same person and hangs out with the 2 Capitol Police vehicles. It's a different person in a different hoodie. It's not the bombing subject. So you have to have one of 2 things be true. Either we believe that 2 people were dressed similarly in the same alley in the middle of the night on January 5th, 2021, where the bomb was supposedly placed. Or this person is lying and trying to cover, and there's some evidence that this person is in fact lying and trying to cover. Very real possibility of that. That's my assessment, nobody else's, Kyle Serafin's. Why? Because they blocked this footage being released for a long time until they've been squeezed. So hopefully this news story, which is what you do when you get information, you responsibly update it. When you have an editor, which the Blaze does, you update the story, and that happened. Great. You update the story, and things get shaken out. And now they have a squeeze point, and they can say, you need to give us that information. You need to make this camera available. I wouldn't have even retracted the story for whatever it's worth. Because until proven otherwise, and by the way, my opinions about what happened on the street on January 5th are my opinions based on thousands of hours of watching people in Washington, D.C., something that neither Darren Beattie or Julie Kelly or Dan Bongino has experience doing in that way. They didn't do it the same way. I did a different job. I used to watch people for a living who were accused of doing things like this. So it's my take. I don't attribute it to anyone else. You don't have to agree with me. They don't have to agree with me. Kyle Serafin believes that that looks like the same person. And until proven otherwise, I would assume that there are not coincidences and there are not two similarly dressed people in the same damn dark alley in Washington, D.C. at night on January 5th before this crazy stuff takes off. But all I'm saying is, if you do, because it's really weird that the people who went out there and tried to attack us, and Darren Beattie and Julie Kelly both attacked us on this, attacked me like I wrote the piece, which I didn't. The best part of it for me is that they now are taking the word of what? The January 6th committee? Of the congressional investigators in Congress? Aren't these the people that have told us the government's incompetent and lying to us? So I actually believe that, which is why I actually care what I think and not somebody else. And I certainly don't care about what some congressional investigator who's not an investigator. I keep using that word. I should use air quotes. Congressional investigator is somebody who's an attorney that is meant to basically obscure this information from the public. Take that for what it's worth. And more of this will come out slowly. This should have all been out because if the Republicans were serious about giving us transparency, we would know all the footage would be released. They would throw it out in a vault and they would let all the people that want to dig through it, all the autistic weirdos that want to go and just watch video cameras. I love these people for what they're good at. Autism and autism spectrum disorder people in the intel sphere, like working as an intelligence analyst, George Hill will tell you, they're great. They're like a dog with a bone. Like let them just go nuts. They'll go until their eyes bleed because they have that instinct. My instinct is more like hunting people in real life. I like that more interesting. But some of it can be done online. A lot of it can be done to you. You guys have just been told, consider this a tale. Your privacy is not there. This person's privacy is also available as soon as we know a little bit more. The person will be dug into very aggressively and quickly, and there's a lot of public information on all of us. Unless you're a fake person, unless you've been backstopped out of nowhere, unless you were completely fabricated, which is we would call nominally backstopping. And that was a job that I used to have to carry around a fake ID for as well. I just didn't want to do it because I thought it was stupid. It's like having a credit card in my name and a fake ID is not going to fool anybody that I'm interested in trying to fool. I can just friendly talk them out of it, which is what I used to do when I was on the street. That's all I got, y'all. That's all I got for the day. I hope that was informative. If not, you know who to blame. Blame me. I guess that's the only way you can do it. If you guys want to support the program, you want to support MyPillow and the guys over there, Mike Lindell, specifically the mustache-less Mike Lindell, who went so-called undercover, and everybody knew who he was at the DNC. MyPillow.com/Kyle is the promo code. You can save some money, up to 50%, sometimes even more. KYLE is the promo code, or you go to MyPillow.com/Kyle. You'll see all the specials that continually update. Sometimes they do them midweek. And you think Mike Lindell has a jitterbug now after the FBI took his? Because I saw you saying we should get a jitterbug in the chat, and that is exactly right. For all of you who joined us over here on the chat, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Thank you for being on X. Thank you for being on YouTube. Thanks for sharing this. And make sure you've liked, subscribed, notified yourself when we go live, which is at 09:30 Eastern Time. That's 8:30 here in Texas, America. God bless all of you guys. We'll see you again tomorrow. I'm sure this week will continue to get weirder. It's just the nature of the beast. But hang in there. Hang in there. We'll get through it together.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Serafin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Serafin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Serafin.